Welcome to YYC with Y, a series where I talk about things that Calgary, Alberta has to offer. And today, we're talking about artwork. But first, I'd like to ask you some questions. What is a monument? Why do we build them? What do they tell us about our understanding of history? These questions are a vital lens through which we will be discussing the subject of today's video, Wolfe and the Sparrows. Wolfe and the Sparrows is a bronze cast statue that can be found across from the 12th Street Bridge in Inglewood. It was designed by Brandon Vickard alongside representatives from Inglewood. It depicts an oversized rendition of General James Wolfe, modeled after a similar statue by sculptor John Massey Rind, that currently resides in Mount Pearl. From a distance, these statues might seem like a one-to-one parallel. However, there is one major difference between the two, and that is the fact that in our subject, Wolfe's head and neck have dissolved into sparrows. Now, before continuing on to my analysis of the statue, we're going to divert onto a little history lesson involving the battle on the Plains of Abraham and sparrows. The battle on the Plains of Abraham was a pivotal battle in the 7 Years' War, which was fought between Britain and France as well as their colonies. The battle was fought to take control of Quebec and ended in a British victory, securing British control over Quebec and later all of Canada. General James Wolfe, who the statue is named and modeled after, was the British general in this battle and died on the battlefield. Now, on to sparrows. If you live anywhere in North America, you've probably seen a house sparrow before. The little guys are pretty much everywhere. But what you might not know is that even though they're here now, that wasn't always the case. The truth is that the house sparrow is an introduced and occasionally invasive species to the continent and is native to Eurasia. One of the reasons, alongside pest management, that the sparrow was originally introduced to the Americas is due to its associations with Europe for the colonists, a way of making the New World more familiar. And the sparrows thrived here, sometimes to the detriment of native species that they outcompeted and outbred for limited resources. So, what do these things have to do with Wolfe and the Sparrows? Well, to answer that, I'll be returning to one of the questions I posed earlier. What do monuments tell us about our understanding of history? The original statue that this one was based on was a celebration of Wolfe's victory over the French. But was that victory really a Canadian one? The truth is that Wolfe is as Canadian as the sparrows, both transplants from across the Atlantic. And to add to that, the original statue wasn't even originally intended for Canada. It was donated here from its original location in New York City, and John Massey Rind, its sculptor, was Scottish, which just adds to the question, whose history does it intend to portray by existing? Wolfe and the Sparrows seeks to challenge the way we approach history. It invites us to sit down and think about the ways we portray the historical figures we revere and immortalize in bronze. Wolfe was a hero to the British settlers. But the British history of this country isn't the only one that exists. There are people being left out of that picture that have just as rightful of a claim to it. Art tells a story, and monuments are no exception to that. Wolfe and the Sparrows doesn't posit that monuments shouldn't exist at all. It just wants to bring attention to the history that is often left out of the frame, or the cast as it was in this case. The statue was installed in May of 2019, and in August 2019, its base was graffitied with the words "Decolonize Canada," though the graffiti was soon removed soon after. I was first introduced to the statue in summer of 2022. I was working a summer job where every single Friday I'd have to walk across the 12th Street Bridge to get to the Bow Habitat station. And so for 2 months, every single week, I'd see the statue, which just made me more and more curious to what it was supposed to represent. For some reason at the time, the statue didn't have its plaque, so all I had to go on was a guy turning into sparrows, or what I thought was sparrows at the time, which turned out to be right. It took some desperate and very specific Googling to get the statue's name, and I'm glad I looked it up. Learning the history of the statue was really interesting and raised some questions regarding monuments and other forms of public art that I just never really had thought about before. And it definitely helps that the statue is really visually interesting to look at. It's detailed, and literally from a distance, you can't tell that the sparrows are there, but once you get closer, you can see each of the sparrows individually, and all of them have so much detail. It is gorgeous. If you ever get the chance to visit Inglewood, I would highly recommend keeping an eye out for the statue. And if not, then try checking out local monuments in your own area. There might be more to them than meets the eye as well. Thank you for checking out the video. All my sources are in the description below, including some resource guides that are made by the city, and that includes interviews with the designer. So if you want to learn more about the statue, I would highly recommend checking those out. And hope to see me later.